The number one, I believe, sold for $1 million.
One day they called me from the SEC and they said, we have 15 people here in our room and want to listen to why you buy stock certificates and what you plan to do.
This is the National Stock and Bond Show in Washington, D.C. 24 years we've been doing it.
This is the best group of people you could possibly work with.
Scripophily is the name of the hobby, and we love stocks and bonds.
Hi, I'm Brian Hanley, and welcome to Ticker History, where we explore financial history through the lens of old stock and bond certificates. Today, we're in the 19th Annual Stock and Bond Show. The Stock and Bond Show attracts dealers from the U.S. and around the world. Join us today as we interview dealers, take a look at some of their unique collections, and learn more about this hobby. There's something here for everyone, ranging from just $1 for a certificate all the way up to thousands of dollars for more rare items. We hope that you enjoy this journey, and if you like what you see, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave a comment below and let us know what you found interesting. Please check out This Week in History, a free email newsletter going out to 25,000 financial professionals, investors, and history nerds alike. It's free, it's weekly, so make sure that you click below or visit us at tickerhistory.com and subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy this video.
You could collect it because they're beautiful documents. You could collect these things because they're historically significant. You could collect them because you're interested in the company. I have a friend, he found a certificate that his grandfather signed as treasurer of some railroad.
Who am I here with?
Tim Welo. I am the chairman of the International Bond and Shares Society. The interesting thing about this hobby is, and this is a great example, here with this dealer, a number of certificates, and they're only $3 each. You know, so you can get in the hobby for not much money and, you know, very interesting material, or you can spend $30,000.
Right.
You know, if you want a founder share for Standard Oil, signed by John D., you're going to spend $40,000.
And this is George LaBarre.
Chris LaBarre of George LaBarre Galleries.
It's always exciting to see new things that you've never seen before.
Right.
And this show is just tremendous that way. We must have bought 300 pieces here, running from $2 on up to $1,000.
Yep. This is a check signed by Alexander Hamilton. Usually he signs A. Hamilton, and it's signed Alexander Hamilton. He doesn't usually spell out his first name, Alexander. So it's
signed by him quite a bit.
Yeah.
Especially signed the way it is signed. Yeah.
That's really cool. Very primitive, 1795.
Wow.
That's around 19,000.
We find here
What is known as a print of one of the most coveted stock certificate. Well, it's actually an obligation.
Is it a copy?
It is a print that was in a European magazine that 100 of these were printed of genuine bonds were signed or initialed by Marcel Duchamp, and is very, very rich in history, a lot of art history. It's combined between Scripophily as well as art. And so one of them went into, I think it's certificate number one, that sold for about $1 million.
Wow.
And there was another one that sold in Sotheby's or Christie's for $500,000.
What keeps you motivated?
The treasure troves. You keep looking, you keep seeing something new. I'm sure if I can live another 40 years, I'll continue finding things that are really, unique that I've never seen before. And then the cool thing is there's plenty of other safety deposit boxes to be found and to be opened, and cabinets that have a drawer. And there was a state trooper from the state of New York that came to me and said, I found this in a very early piece of furniture, and it was a bunch of 1865 Mexican bonds.
You sound like now this.
And I offered $grand for the group. We met at the airport at Syracuse, and he's like, why are you buying this? Why are you buying this? I said, well, it's collectible. And so I handed him a cashier's check, and we parted ways, and he was very happy, and I was very happy, and they're beautiful. It's just beautiful stuff.
It's amazing.
I'm Fred Fuld.
And how long have you been in this industry? How'd you get into it?
Well, I've been in it for at least 20 years that I remember, maybe 25 years. I started out as a stockbroker right out of college. And at the time, people would come into certificates and they'd want to take a tax loss on worthless companies that they had stock certificates for. So I told our trader who calls in the trades, I said, if anybody comes in, I'm willing to pay $1, and in order to let that person have a confirmation showing that they have a tax loss. And so I ended up buying a lot of certificates that way, where people, they just had interesting certificates, but they were basically worthless, but I was able to help them out, and then I started building this collection. And then I started going to antique stores. I started going to coin shows and looking for stock certificates, stamp shows, that type of thing.
Yeah. You want to show us some of the stuff that you're most interested in that you brought to the show today?
Okay. Trump Hotels and Grand Resorts Casino, and it has the vignette of Donald Trump with his hotels and casinos in the background. It also has his machine printed signature at the bottom, the bold signature there as chairman.
I noticed this one is issued to you, so can you tell us the story about how you invested in the company, or what was the journey of that?
At the time, the Trump company was on the verge of going bankrupt, and I thought it'd be interesting to have some of these certificates. So back in the early 2000s, you could actually, buy, say, 20 or 30 or 50 shares of a company, have certificates issued in your name in one share certificate format. And so I did that, and that's how I ended up with these certificates.
My name is Larry Schuffman. I'm out of Pensacola, Florida. I've made a lot of wonderful friends over about the past quarter century that I've been involved in this, and it's been an awful lot of fun. Think of myself as kind of a pseudo-financial historian. I've been privileged to have been an adjunct professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey, and also an adjunct for the Museum of American Finance. So what I've found is that you learn a lot about a country's history through its money. During World War I, to fund the war effort, the United States issued what was called war-saving stamps and also Liberty bonds. There was a series of 5 Liberty bonds issued from the time the United States went into the war. June, I could be wrong, of 1917, or maybe April of 1917, up until Armistice Day in 1918. So this is the 4th series. The interest rates, which everybody kind of take a look at, these were issued in 1918. So it was a 20-year bond, and it was callable after 15, meaning that if interest rates went down, the government had the right to take the bonds out of circulation. The other thing that I thought I'd share with your listeners, viewers, etc., again, this was exchangeable into gold up until the time we went off the gold standard in 1933. So if you think about this is $50 in gold. Back then, gold was, I think, $20 an ounce. So it was 2.5 ounces of gold was what this was. Now, if you turn it into value today, an ounce of gold is about $2,800. This had about $7,000 of purchasing power, exclusive of the coupons that went with it. Well, this coupon rate, again, was, reading upside down, I think it's 4.25%. So that means that every 6 months, you would get a coupon, you would get on a $50 bond, so it would pay $2.13 a year, okay? So every 6 months, here's April and October, you would literally cut a coupon off. This bond actually had 5 coupons with it. When it was issued fully, you'd cut one off, walk into the bank, and they would pay you, that money. That's what they did. Really pretty vignettes on the back. There's some others, and the vignettes were very beautiful and very patriotic.
That's great.
So that's kind of the scoop.
And what's an item like this go for now, and how do you kind of determine the value of something like this?
Well, one thing is supply and demand. This you still can actually cash in for $50 plus the coupons. So it's still good. All right. The thing is, though, this is worth, in this condition, around $1,000.
My name is Bob Kiersten. Website is Scripophily.com, and Scripophily is the name of the hobby. The typical stock certificate has the name of the company, the date it was issued on it, the printed signatures. The older ones are handwritten signatures, but the newer ones are printed signatures, or the president or the officers of the company, usually a secretary, president, or chairman of the board. They have the number of shares that were issued on the certificate. They have a serial number on the certificate, and they have the CUSIP number for the modern certificates. And the CUSIP number were People always say, well, here's the QSIP number, the certificate isn't worth anything. Well, all the QSIP number does is identify the company or the type of security. It doesn't identify what happened to the company. So QSIP, people on the internet says, well, you got to find the QSIP number to find out if the certificate's worth anything. It's not true. You want to find the name of the company and contact that company if you can directly to see whether or not it's still around, if it's worth anything.
That's great.
And then you have, so it has the corporate seal, like this one was issued in 1998.
And then we typically have, 2 signatures on it? Or
Typically 2 signatures. And, and then it has the fine print. And on the back side, if you want to transfer the certificate, there's the wording to transfer it to somebody.
And these were actually contracts, right? For stock?
Yeah, but the difference is, just because you have a stock certificate doesn't mean that you still have ownership in the company. All it was is at the time that it was purchased, it meant you had ownership in the company. But sometimes people lose their stock certificates. If they lost their stock certificates, they could have received a replacement certificate. So then people find their old certificates and they go, oh, gee, I never cashed this in, but you can't cash it in twice if the company's still around.
Nice. That's cool. For new people getting into this industry, what advice would you give them?
Number one, buy things that you like. Don't buy, you could buy things as an investment, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you can't predict it. It's like the stock market. You just don't know.
Right.
But you buy things that you like. And if you buy things that you like that you can enjoy, frame on the wall. And we always tell people to get these float frames where there are 2 pieces of plexiglass or glass in a frame, and you put the stock certificate in it, and then it has a frame around it, and then you can look at the front and the back. And if you get tired of that certificate, you take it off and put it in why spend $200 or $300 for framing when you get a float frame and just put it on the wall?
That's great. Yeah, it's all about showing it and visualizing it
and enjoying it. Getting the enjoyment out of it.
Totally, they're great gifts.
This is Bob Schell, and this is Judy Schell.
Nice.
We're the promoters of the show. We have been for 24 years. This is the National Stock and Bond Show in Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's been 24 years we've been doing it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How did it originate?
Well, I was trying to find a show that was reasonable for the dealers so we could get more people into the hobby. And I started out with renting a kind of a broken down ballroom down in Alexandria. They've long time ago ripped down that hotel. And we actually put up people at our house, and we served, because the restaurant had been closed down in that hotel, we actually gave, especially the out-of-towners, the ones that came from Germany or Europe, we would serve them Virginia ham at night, and then pizzas during lunch, that type of thing. So, yeah, that's how we started the show, so that more people could get in and make it reasonable. When we started out, of course, we were able to do it for like $30 a table. Well, now you can't do that anymore when you rent a ballroom,
Right.
So,
Totally.
yeah. So that's how we started,
Nice.
23 years ago. There have been a lot of great, beautiful collections that have been donated to museums that ended up in the basement somewhere, So, but it's a great thing. The paper's beautiful. The vignettes are beautiful. And somebody's probably already told you, the rarity depends on condition and numbers that are out there. Has it been seen before? Or is the company meaningful? Or who is it signed by?
Right.
Simple as that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Judy, how has your experience been with this industry and Bob going down? How do you feel about it?
Well, when we first started, I thought, what are we doing? But I love these guys. This is the best group of people you could possibly work with.
Yes.
And I enjoy it. I mean, I wouldn't come if I didn't.
Right, exactly. Are there any particular categories that you're interested in personally?
Well, of course, being a Wisconsin girl, anything from Wisconsin is always an interest, for both of us, actually.
Yeah.
So I would guess, I don't have anything in particular, but if it's from Wisconsin, I certainly would take a good long look at it.
That's great. And what are you excited for in the future?
The show, we're hopeful that more young people like yourself gain an interest in this. I think the great thing about it is that the sources could now cut off. I mean, they don't print these things anymore. It's all electronic, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so at some point, somebody's going to say, wow, this is what really represented. This is history. You're looking at a piece of paper that's more than just a piece of paper. It's the history of a company and the thousands of people that worked for the company and what they produced and what impact they had on history. That's a lot of it. It really is. So, yeah.
Believe it or not, this is wicked rare. What you see right here. This is his family's grandfather, the stuff he's looking at. That's his name. People seeing their family stuff. It's
You're
very
Hutzler? So the business was, my family, the Hutzler family, came from Bavaria in
in the 1840s, and they
Did you have fun?
Jewish family, and they came with something like $18 in their pocket, and it was just a classic American story. And they came Hutzler Brothers Company. The earliest I know is they actually were pack peddlers. So they actually had a wagon, a horse and a wagon, and they took stuff from Baltimore and they took it out to Frederick, Maryland area at the time, the family of 6 children. Each one of the brothers started actually a business on their own. One started a retail business, one started a wholesale business, and eventually they consolidated in 1858 into what became Hutzler Brothers Company. Just again, a classic story where the business started small and it just kept expanding, and it eventually became the premier department store in Baltimore, one of them. And the business expanded. It was a lone store, one location in downtown Baltimore until 1951 when they opened their first suburban store, which was in Towson, Maryland. And it eventually expanded to about 7 stores, including one on the Eastern Shore in Salisbury, Maryland. And but it was interesting. The writing certainly was on the wall by the 1960s. Things were changing very quickly, and the discount retailers were coming into being, and it was this threat. I remember being with my father had visited the Westview store, walked around, got back in his car. We drove down, and he says, "I need to show you something." So on the right side of the road, there was a newly opened Corvettes, if you remember Corvettes.
Yep.
And he said, we drove into the parking lot, and he says, "I want you to look at this." He said, "This is a problem." And he knew back then, right after it opened, that Corvettes was, and the whole concept of discount self-service retailing was a real threat to the business. So actually, not too long thereafter, they put the business on the block, and the whole business wrapped up in 1992.
Wow.
This is one of the types of stock certificates. There's some other ones. Well, when the business was sold, there were 92 family members actually who were shareholders in the business at that time. Everything worked out, until the era changed. That's the best way to put it.
Right.
So today we see Macy's is still existing, and although in trouble, it's the end of an era, sadly.
Yeah.
But
This is a relic of the past, though, right?
yep. So I'm glad to be able to share this with whoever.
Scott Winslow.
Scott, tell us a little bit about your journey here into this industry. How'd you get started?
Well, actually, I've been doing this my entire life. In my working life, I started out actually working with George LaBarre when I was a kid, at the age of about 14. And throughout high school and college, I worked with him. So in 1985, I started working for myself.
That's great. And what do you do?
I deal with historical stock certificates, bonds, manuscripts, autographs, currency, a lot of early American paper money, things like that.
And how did you come into a lot of this stuff?
Well, at the beginning, you start buying from dealers, you start buying from auctions, and then you get occasionally the fortunate opportunity to buy from an institution, a big archive or something like that, which is always fun when you can make it happen, although it's not that frequent. And then institutions, and once you develop a name for yourself in the industry, you start having the opportunities to buy collections that already exist. I've sold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pieces through the years. It's been 40 years. It's hard to look back and say it's been 40 years, but it has.
Awesome. And what are some of your personal favorites? Any industries, companies, styles?
Well, I particularly like a lot of early American types of the development of our capital system from the 18th century, the late 18th century, up to I'd say 1850. I like early vignetted pieces, the companies that transportation, railroads, and I really enjoy
collecting and dealing with things that are signed by the men who built our country. John Jacob Astor, John D. Rockefeller. Yeah, you can't go on and on, but with a litany of names. But the people that built our country.
Yeah.
Well, I can only encourage you to get out there and learn about this stuff. The hobby is a fantastic one. There's a lot of opportunities to be on the ground floor of certain themes, and you can buy a lot of really interesting stuff for a reasonable amount of money still.
That's great. Can you share a little bit about what's been going on?
In terms of the show, the future. Well, I've happily am picking up the ball and taking it forward with trying to operate the show. And continue a life of it. There's been for 38 years. There's been a national stock and bond show in the U.S. from the early inception of Strasbourg, and then Bob and Judy picked that up with the National Stock and Bond Show to continue it on. So we've got 38 continuous years of a national stock and bond show. So the point is to continue that, for the coming years and beyond. That's my goal.
That's great. So when is the show next year?
It's always at the end of January to the beginning of February, so it will still be in that time. I don't have the exact dates.
And where is it typically?
It's going to be held still at the same place that it has been for the last number of years, which is the Crown Plaza Dulles in Herndon, Virginia.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you interested in learning more about financial history? Check out Ticker History, where each week we explore this week in history through the lens of finance. Going out to over 25,000 investors and history nerds alike, this free email newsletter jam-packed with information about how history plays a role in our modern society. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm Brian Hanley from Virginia.